pleasure to have you, Hussein. I'm so glad you've joined us. And
Thanks for having me on.
I have a question. This is kind of trivial, but I really care about names. And Hussein Abdul-Hussain, you're spelling it A-I-N. And I pay
Yes.
so much attention to all my books. There's the E-I-N camp, the A-I-N. And I'm wondering, is Hussein and Hussein the same family and you just are having it transliterated differently?
Yes, it's the same name, just from Iraq and further east. So Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan, they use it with an A, and the rest of the world with an E. My dad is Iraqi, so my an Iraqi passport. So that's how it started with an A. And then
Ah.
on my Lebanese passport, it's an E. But I rarely use my Lebanese passport, so it gets a messy
Yes,
situation kind
yes.
of thing.
Because I've seen it spelled every which way, and so I finally settled on EIN, but I'm going to follow yours for you, of course. Now, this is another one of these questions. I do have serious, bigger questions to be asking you, but it's fun to get to know you. Are you any relationship to the Hussein family line from Saudi Arabia? That, of course, Iraq, the king of Jordan, going back to the first king of Jordan, Abdullah, um, and you are any family relationship to Saddam Hussein? So I'm
Right.
asking.
So here's the thing. Saddam Hussein decided to take out all the family names from everyone's name in Iraq. So Abdul Hussein is my direct grandpa, who
Oh,
I was named after. So that's not the family name. So 90% of the Iraqis you meet, they won't have, they're not using their family names. This is their immediate grandpa. The family is Al Ali, but I mean, there's no point of using it if it's on nothing that,
if it's
no record or
if it's
so.
gone.
Yes. So it's, I mean, like Saddam Hussein, that's his dad. And Abdul Hussein is my grandpa. So it's just like direct stuff, no last name. The reason he did that was because if he didn't, then everybody in his cabinet would be the same family, the same last name.
Oh gosh, there's always a weird explanation behind something
Yeah.
like that. So, and one more question about names. Hajime Al-Husseini. I've always wondered if the Husseini, that extra I, or whatever you would say in Arabic, um, is that from the same family line, but there's a reason an I is added to the end, or that E sound, Husseini?
So it's the same name, but it's the adjective. So if you turn it, so something that belongs to Hussein, and the reason they use it this way is to indicate that they descend from the line of the Prophet through his grandson Hussein. So they trace their ancestry all the way back, and they call themselves Husseini, and that's a marker that they descend from the Prophet.
Got it. All right, that's out of the way. Some things are happening where, firstly, you're at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, an extraordinary organization. It's my go-to. I love everything that you guys do there. And so I brush up on things. I first go to FDD. And so tell me, what is your X account for yourself personally? And then FDD is just at FDD, right?
Yes. So my account is HAHUSSAIN. That's X. And
Right.
and the one with FDD, my email with FDD, you just drop the HA. So it's just Hussein, my name at
Hussein
FDD.
at
Clearly
FDD.
because there are a dozen Davids, but only me. So I'm the only Hussein at the organization. So,
You know, tell me a little bit about, I don't think you ever get asked this question, at least not from whatever I've seen you. Um, Tell me about your childhood. You grew up in Beirut. I don't know if you went then to Baghdad and then came back to Lebanon before you went to America, or I just made that up, kind of. I assume that.
right. Yeah. No, no. So all these countries exist in my history. The order is a bit different. My dad is Iraqi and my mom is Lebanese. And I grew up mainly in Baghdad the first 8 to 10 years in my life. And then we left Iraq and we moved to Lebanon because of the Iraq-Iran war and whatnot. And then I spent the growing up going to school, high school, and college, and then my first job with Beirut's The Daily Star as a journalist at the time. All of this happened in Lebanon until I moved here to the U.S. 20 years ago. So that's pretty much my.
And so what made you move to America? Why did you want to come? Was it easy? Tell me a little bit about that.
Uh, so when I was studying history and archaeology at the American University of Beirut, and of course, thanks to the huge and amazing Jaffet library that they have over there, it just gave me access to literature, and I'm always grateful for that. And I got to reading about the thought of the Renaissance and the European Enlightenment and French Revolution, the American Revolution, life, liberty, equality, pursuit of happiness. And these concepts started changing my perspective on things. So by the time the US showed up to announce that, okay, we're taking out this brutal dictator and spreading democracy, as someone whose family had to flee Iraq because of the same brutal dictator, I broke ranks with my peers in my social circles at the time in Lebanon because they clearly opposed the war. And I said, that's it. There's no way I will support Saddam. There's no way I'll say no to democracy. And I've been on this pathway since. I pledged that I will support democracy. I supported the war. I supported the effort to spread democracy. I've supported every process of change in every Arab country. Of course, all of them seeking democracy. And that's the reason I came here was that when Congress set up Arabic language TV at the time, I was one of the bunch who got recruited to put the TV together. I was in charge of the Iraq stream at the time, and so that was my first few years in Washington. That's what I did. And then eventually I parted ways with that TV and I started working for a Kuwaiti newspaper managing their office here in Washington. And so that gave me access and connections in the Gulf. And then by the time the Abraham Accords were cooking, FDD came to me and said, you know the Gulf and you support peace and you support Israel.
Kushner
So
or who came to you?
FDD, my
Oh,
organization.
FDD. Okay.
Yeah. So FDD came to me and said, "You support Israel, you support Arab-Israeli peace, you know the Gulf. Do you want to put all of these together and join us?" And I said, "Of course.
I'm
My,
here.
my favorite things just put together and defending democracy on top of them." So
That
I've
is
been with FDD for a few years now, 4 going on 5, I think. So that's my story.
that's lovely. Oh gosh, there's so many directions I always say this, there's so many great directions I could go here. So I've got your backstory. Do you have family back in Iraq and in Lebanon?
I I do in Iraq. Um, I do in Lebanon, of course, both countries. More so in Lebanon now. Um, but like most families from these two countries, um, they're scattered all over the place. So I have a sister in Dubai. I have a sister here in Washington, and I have a brother still in Beirut. So we're just all over the place.
Are they excited about Lebanon and Syria? What's the scoop from your family?
So they're absolutely excited about change coming to Lebanon. Now, they have the idea that if Lebanon gets close to peace with Israel, that'll probably makes it easier for me to visit. I haven't visited in a while, clearly because my position does not align with the Hezbollah, who were dominating the country. So they think, if there's peace, things will get easier. The country will start growing. I can, start visiting, spending maybe some time in the summer over there. So yeah, absolutely. Now, the situation in Syria is a bit different. Uh, Lebanon and Syria are very close countries, and Assad controlled Lebanon for 29 years. So we know them really well, and they know us really well. So that's an organic link there. And plus, they're intermarried. So my immediate aunt, my mother's sister, is married to a Syrian and lives in Damascus, and my cousins are Syrian and Damascene. So we're very much interconnected. Now, what's happening in Syria is a source of anxiety. I mean, source of joy, of course, for many of us, including myself, but also, we don't know what's coming next. So, I'm trying to find a silver lining in all of this. I'm trying to take this gentleman, Shara, the former Al-Qaeda guy, as he claims. I'm trying to take him, on his word. He's saying, I've changed. I'm a new person. And I'm saying, great, all of this is pleasant surprise, but I want to see
Your
deeds, I
last
want to see things.
article was I loved this. I love this title. Understanding Syria's pleasantly surprising new ruler, Um, Shara. And so I got the feeling from reading it that you want to be cautiously optimistic, but I was laughing because your other article was about Masab Youssef. I don't know what day that was, but he's warning that al-Shura is planning on an eventual Sharia kind of a state and don't take anything that he's saying at face value, which I know you're not just saying that, but he got apparently blocked on X because he said a new Islamic empire is born. Don't feed it, starve it. And then he says the new generation of jihadists is more sophisticated than any terrorist group in the past. I bet you that part is true though, because they've been watching how when when Hamas did what they did, they got a great response from jihadis all over the world, including American campuses. But most certainly, they're probably calculating and saying, I think we could be more diplomatic and hide what our ultimate goals are if they are different than that um, very American Western democratic, we're all so happy and love each other kind of approach. So what do you think about that?
So, okay, first things first. Let me just say that I don't believe in these guys. I know that they have a bloody history. They have American blood on their hands. But I agree with the approach that if they say we've changed, we have to give them the benefit of the doubt. So that's the source of my trying to see him in a positive light. But this does not mean that we're idiots. So I picked everything positive from what he said, and there are a few positive things. But then I made sure that we want to see things on the ground. Now, what's going on is that this gentleman Shara is saying all the right things, but I'm surveying social media. I'm talking to friends in Damascus in Syria. Things are going in the opposite direction. So so you have a university in Hamas that's where they're praying collectively on campus and changing its name into the name of the Muslim conqueror of Syria. And then you have this guy saying, I'm the moderate person. So what I'm trying to say is that I'm trying to say, look, I want to believe you. If you're saying these things, that's a pleasant surprise for us. But we're not idiots. So um, I just don't want to be caught in a position where they say we came to you and wanted to be moderate, and you closed that door. You didn't listen to us.
I
That's
couldn't
that's my
agree
thinking.
more with you because there is it's subtle, but really it's not so subtle. Ronald Reagan said, "Trust but verify." We all remember that,
Right.
and that there's something about that because, okay, speaking from a Christian perspective, you're supposed to be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. You're supposed to have wisdom, but yet and love, but you're not supposed to be a fool. All right, and so but then if you did what if you if you are just cynical and just say, we don't believe you, and you behave harshly and don't give them a chance, then they have one good reason. They have cover for whatever they do next. And we don't want to do that. But they actually could be sincere, which I doubt, but they could, couldn't
I mean,
they?
I'm almost certain that they're not sincere.
Hmm.
But again, I don't want to be the one who starts this animosity. If they're saying,
Right.
let's turn the page, I'm saying, yes, we'd love to turn the page. Now show me the money, or, show me what you got. And clearly they haven't showed us much. So what I've been trying to do is that I'm saying, I believe you and I will believe in you. And at the same time, I'm putting out on my X account all the time what I call serious red flags. So whenever I see something that's of concern to me, I'm just posting it out there and saying, what do you want us to believe? Which one? What you say or what you do? My thinking is that it won't take much time before we are certain that this is just talk. But we have to test it first, right? I mean, I don't want to be the guy who say, I come to you in peace and then say, no, no, we hate you anyway for your past.
That's just
Past
a
is past,
foolish thing.
bygones be bygones. But
The Syrian people and all, forget him, Shara. Forget Shara. It's everybody else that has to see that America, Israel, all of us are putting our hands out sincerely. And if you bite our hand, then your people and everybody else will know. Because Arabs are not stupid people. They're going to see what happens and
absolutely.
be
Now,
able to
here's another
identify it.
thing. The Syrians have been really jubilant about change. And I've been in their shoes. Remember, I just told you I supported the war and toppling Saddam. So I've been in their shoes before. I've been in their shoes also in Lebanon, my second country over there. There are so many times that things changed and then things went south after that. So
Yes.
I'm putting myself in their shoes, and I don't want them to think that we didn't give their revolution a chance. But I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, I just don't see it. There are more Islamists, and if you look up my X account today, I've been
Oh,
calling on the
I
non-Islamist
follow you.
Syrians. I'm saying, look, this is now is your chance. Yeah, I'm just saying, now is your chance. If you want to claim your country, do it now. Before we start, uh, the boxing match starts with between us and this guy.
You know, interesting. When I was uh, noticing your pinned comment, and I'd seen this before, and I thought, I want to talk to this guy. Um, you said 20 years on, Iraq is better than it was before the war that toppled Saddam. Thanks to all the U.S. sacrifice and blood and treasure, I'm someone who's forever indebted to Americans who made my freedom and that of many Iraqis possible. Discussing Iraq on C-SPAN. Well, that wasn't the beautiful ending, discuss, but who made that many Iraqis possible. And I thought, this is how you can take one action war. Y- You and so many Westerners um, would be in the same camp, but for good, for democratic, and for us, we're a constitutional republic, for democracy, whatever, truth, freedom, the Enlightenment. And yet, as an Iraqi, you are so glad that Saddam was toppled, and um, and many people in the West say we should never have gone over to Iraq. And what? So how do you reconcile that?
Number one, this depends on your benchmark. So, for me, as someone who with an Iraqi passport at the time, we were in a very miserable situation. The country was under global sanctions, impoverished, ruled by a brutal dictator. Our passport was worth nothing. I mean, no country would take you in. So it was not even a country. So anything that we got after that, I mean, when I first went to Iraq, I had to explain to my family, cousins, and everybody else what an ATM was. And and when they saw the satellite phone in my hand, it was as if I had just landed from Mars. a phone that's wireless that could talk from anywhere. So this is where Iraq was, before the whole thing started. So if this is your benchmark, and then you can compare now to what we had 20 years ago, then it's absolutely in a better place. If your benchmark is a Jeffersonian democracy, then we're still far from that spot, right? I mean, it's a matter of perspective. Now, we as America went in, but we had not done our homework. That's the main issue that we had. And then there's another thing that, and this allows our enemies to beat us, not only in the Middle East, but even with the Russians and the Chinese, is that our foreign policy, which used to be bipartisan and consistent 20, 30 years ago, is now very inconsistent and swings back and forth in such a way that allies cannot rely on us and enemies don't fear us. So for us to be reliable and fearsome, we have to be consistent regardless of the party who's in the White House. And this, as someone who's been in this town for 20 years, I learned this when I came here. So now you understand that what these guys do. If you're Khamenei, the ruler of Iran, what you do is that the first thing that comes to your mind when Trump wins the election, you think, I'm going to wait him out. Because this is democracy, right? I mean, this is America. 4 years, count 4 years, hunker down, count 4 years. He'll be replaced. You'll go back to your shenanigans and killing everybody in the region. So this is the issue that we had with Iraq. So, I mean, to my mind, the best piece of foreign policy we had was the surge of troops in Iraq. And if you remember at the time, it was opposed by both parties. So, I mean, when candidate John McCain endorsed it, he was seen as a crazy guy. But I think this was the best piece of foreign policy that we had. It did stabilize Iraq. By the time Obama ordered our troops to leave, violence in Iraq had dropped to pre-war levels. Except that Obama didn't know what we had done to stabilize them, so he just undid everything. He said, okay, then it looks like a sovereign country to me. Okay, bye. And that's how things rebounded. The Shia went after the Sunnis, and that's why we had to go back, because the Sunnis, after abandoning Al Qaeda and we threw them under the bus, they went back to ISIS. So this is roughly what happened. So from where I see it, it was a good thing. Now, our partisanship and spite and all kinds of things. Okay, then it
Let me ask you about that, because what you just answered is exactly what I have been cringing and just kind of ashamed to where, because of the point to which our foreign policy has taken us. When I see Obama with Iran and Biden, and then I see Trump and now Trump again, and I think this is nuts. Our friends can't trust us to be friends always. I mean, obviously, as long as we have the same general interest, but your friends are your friends, and your allies, your long. I mean, we're always going to be an ally of Great Britain unless it turns into a Sharia state, which I wouldn't be surprised about. But we're allies, right? We may disagree, but
right.
we're allies. We stay with our friends. Our enemies don't fear us because they know we're going to just throw our allies out the window sometime. And then what I think, and you tell me what your perception is on this, when we talk about this discontinuity and this sort of, what do they call it when you're bipolar? Like this bipolar thing going on with our foreign policy, it seems to me that part of it is that the Democrat Party, of which I do not belong, I'm a Trump MAGA supporter, I'm America first, and I think Iraq should be Iraq first, and Israel should be Israel first. I think every country, if they did that, what would a Jeffersonian democracy anywhere in the world, or anything that makes a country a good country, is a good thing. Okay, that goes off into another direction. My point is this, that if if Democrats still thought of America first as America first, even when we're disagreeing and just angry with each other about Marxism and transgender stuff and everything. But at least in our foreign policy, if the Democrats and the Republicans can remain the same, being whatever is best for America and her allies is what is best. Is that part of the problem?
So, uh, partisanship aside, I'm also an America first, especially on foreign policy. And I'm a naturalized, proud US citizen. And my allegiance is to this country. And if there's anything between this country and the other countries that I came from, this country wins my heart. I mean, I side with this country. So the homeland is, the ancestral homeland. And that's how I raise my kids. Now, the point here is that America first sometimes requires that we have strong allies and, so supporting Israel, a strong Israel, is a core US interest. It really, really helps us stay who we are on the world stage. And when I advise friends and family and, whoever in Lebanon and Iraq, I'm advising them from the perspective of American interest. And I advise them to stand where the American interest is, because that's where you'll get support. Look, if you do this, America will support you. But we will not come after you only because, we like your food, or, or you're funny, or I mean, yeah, I mean, whatever it is. But we're trying to explain to allies all the time, look, alliances are great, and any great country needs allies. But we can't have allies who are really just sitting there and doing nothing and expect us to do all the heavy lifting. And
Oh, no,
one
no,
of
no. I agree. But what I'm saying is to you were talking about, and I agree fully, that America's foreign policy just flips and flops. And as a patriot, I want our foreign policy to be seen as this s- bulwark and this strong
yes,
and solid. And we
consistent.
know what we're doing. If we're going to have this much power, this much money, this great a military, spend almost $1 trillion on, I think we should have our heads together. And it's one thing for Mr. Shara to change his mind and grow up, but we've been around a while. We should always be grown up, America.
Yes,
And so that's where I
absolutely.
was going, because I agree with what you're saying about, if our allies, or even those who are not really our allies but want to join that orb, then act like allies, support the
Yes,
the good, and we will support you. But I'm talking about in America. I didn't intend to really go here, but since we're here, let me just ask this quick question, then we'll move on. Um, if America were more consistent, if the Democrats and the Republicans, and I don't believe in the uniparty either, and I don't believe in the military industrial complex and the deep state. All these things are real things in America. I don't know what people across the world think about that, but they're real here. And so, but I think that what we should all be doing is coming to one foreign policy principle that we can apply as a consistent principle to stand on.
yes, I agree. And I think one of the mistakes that's mostly on the Democratic side is that they endorse an idea that the American power is a source or a force of evil, not good.
Mm, yeah.
So that we inherited the evil of the colonial European empires, wherein we were the exact opposite, but that in their narrative doesn't matter. And then they want us to not only apologize, but talk talk to anyone and that say, look, Iran was great until we had this CIA sponsored coup, and this is because of us. So in their minds, if America gets out of the way or disappears, then the world will be everyone be holding their violins and playing them and be happy, which is the opposite of what would happen if we disappear. The Chinese and the Russians would not only occupy the other nations, they'll probably enslave them and take them to coal mines. Well, that's reality. I mean, the only thing keeping Vladimir Putin from invading Denmark is because Denmark are our allies. So, and it hurts as Americans, when you're talking to a Danish person and they're saying, it's all because of you, American power. That's and then it's like, look, because of us, you have a zero defense budget and you're using all your money on your healthcare, and
Right.
yeah,
We're
so
paying the freight.
exactly. So
Right.
so that's where I think the Democrats get it wrong. Now, there's another thing that there's a lot of ideology that comes into this. And here, let me just say, these Arab Americans, the people that we call Muslim Americans or Arab Americans, the ones who went on college protests and whatnot and
With the
started heckling everyone.
keffiyehs and their
Right.
posters.
Yes, yes. These guys. Look, these guys are neither Arab nor Muslim. I mean, what they're putting out is a special breed of things locally produced here in America. They imagine the Arab and Muslim world in a different way. No Arabs and Muslims think like them. So, for example, one of these, during the Columbia strike, there's a lady who was, giving a press conference, and behind her stood a guy with a kufiya, of course, on his shoulders, and he was standing in a crop top. It- and I was looking at it, and I'm thinking, you wouldn't last, you wouldn't last 10 minutes, not only in Ramallah, not even in Amman or Cairo. I mean, you'd probably disappear. So the reason I'm giving this example is to say these guys imagine that the trouble over there, the problem over there is something that's not exactly what it is. The issue is not LGBTQ rights. With all due respect to all LGBTQ, I want them to have all the rights they want. That's not the issue over there. So queer for Palestine, that's the exact opposite of what you're saying.
Absolutely, and I agree that I mean, the whole Queers for Palestine thing is become such a joke that, um, we all just laugh about it. But I think that if you stripped away Queers for Palestine, you have an entire generation. I do not think they're irredeemable. I do not think the TikTok
Not
generation
at all.
is irredeemable. My husband, I showed you before we were filming, my husband used to wear this in high school at 15 years of age, and he took Arafat's weekly or monthly bulletin, got it in the mail when there was such a thing as mail coming in your, and he would wear that. And then he kind of woke up one
I
day.
have a picture. I have a picture with one of those on my shoulders. It's on the internet, on my Substack page, from my days at the American University of Beirut. I was exactly like these kids,
Yes,
and my thinking is that the majority of them mature, and once you mature and once you understand the world, then you'll snap out of it. So the idea that the young generation will eventually, become older and the opinion will change, no, it won't happen. This is how it is. These guys think like this because they don't have enough life experience and they're immature. And once they go into the real life and see things, I mean, this is exactly my own experience and my wife's experience. And many of,
exactly.
of my peers, went to college together. We were all shouting Palestine together. None of us is now, thinks that this is the right thing to do.
Right.
So we just matured. We have kids, we have families. I mean, we
You know
have more
what?
important
Somebody
things to
told
look
me
after.
about my youngest daughter, who's my very youngest daughter. She's like the social justice warrior type when she was young. And they said, Elizabeth, your daughter cares so much about truth and she was a kid, little kid, 13, kind of thing. She cares so much about love and truth and justice and everything. She just doesn't have enough information that's accurate to know where justice is really not justice and where love is not love. She doesn't have that discernment, and we have to let them grow up and read the paper or read the internet and really come to terms with reality. Study some history. That's a really
Yeah.
good thing. Books really actually do help, don't they? Well,
Sometimes I'm
no,
sorry.
go ahead. Sometimes you what?
Sometimes I have friends whose children are college age, and they send them to me as if I'm the psychotherapist. Just just tell them why they're wrong. I tell my friend, I'll start charging you from now on if you keep
My
sending
husband,
your kids.
every time we drive into DC, he'll point to a store or some kind of building on the corner, all plate glass. He says, "When I was 15, I threw a brick through that window." He was throwing
Right.
it. He was 15.
Okay.
That's a
Yeah.
long time ago.
Yes.
But so that was the heirs of his youth. You know, there's so much going on in the Middle East, and we all started, this era, whatever, however long it's going to last. I hope it's a long time in a sense. Began with October 7th, and we all know. Well, we won't even go to why October 7th was even able, how that they pulled that off and what the problems within the Israel intelligence and military. But it's like dominoes. Hamas, Hezbollah, Syria, I hope Iran. And is that Netanyahu's strength that he forbeared? He did not allow our president, which I was horrified every time he and Kamala would say something in sort of a moral equivalence and a chastisement. Take the win kind of a thing, and not go into Ramallah, all eyes on Ramallah. Yeah, let's get in there too. So is Netanyahu, has he really proven out his mettle that he was right to do it this way? And is he kind of responsible? Not that he directly coordinated Syria or anything, but for this domino?
So look, I think, people tend to blame him so many times for what they say is extending the time of the war for his own benefit and for his own political gain. And my response to that is all the time. And again, I'm not partisan in the US or in Israel or anywhere else. What I say is that Israel is a democracy with institutions. These people are sending their kids to die and they're spending all their money on this war. It No one person can do that. There's a military establishment, there's an intelligence establishment, there are people who tell him what they're up to, what they can do, what should be done. He can just, it's we are not countries that are ruled on a whim. So exactly. So there's a whole team and establishment. Now, sometimes we get it right and sometimes we get it wrong. But to my mind, since October 7th, Israel has done things so impeccably well that in this 1 year, they've changed the Middle East more than over 15 years we, America, spent in the Middle East without being able to move the needle as they have done over the past year and a half. And look, this is understandable to them. It's an issue of existence, not so much to us. So, if they get it wrong, it's right on their border. If we do, and we're much a bigger country anyway, and we're so far away anyway.
Oceans and all those things, and Canada,
Exactly.
like
E-
Canada.
e- e-
So
Exactly.
you actually pointed out something very, very well, because the weird thing about Netanyahu is that one, he's like, he is the Middle Eastern Hitler, which is so ironic when you really think about all the Assads and the Saddams and all of these guys. He's Hitler. And Americans, some Americans, a certain percentage of Americans absolutely despise him, or liberal Jews, or they hate Netanyahu. And I think if he, I know it takes his entire administration, his military intelligence bureaus, but very few men can do like what Trump just did. The whole world is in awe that he is in office. And right now, I wouldn't want to have anybody but Netanyahu, no matter what you think on different things. He's really become a hero again in Israel, because I think they see that he didn't make all the decisions. He had a whole team, a huge team behind him, but yet to stand up to the United States, I think that takes guts and determination.
So the support that he afforded to his military and his intelligence to finish the job, despite all the noise and the pressure, including from his first and foremost ally, the United States, all of this is, to his credit. I mean, we have to give credit where credit is due. Now, the other stuff, whether you like him for, whether there are corruption cases, whether there are the judiciary stuff, all of this is none of my business. No, no, no. I mean, that's up to Israelis. They're the citizens of this Israel. They're paying these taxes. They decide. But we, as country to country, as allies, I mean, I cannot but express my admiration to the way that Israel has run this war, and I add to it most of the time. I say, for example, in Lebanon, you have at least more than 60% of the Lebanese who are happy that Nasrallah, the chief of Hezbollah, is gone. No one is willing to say, "Look, Israel, thank you," like a bit, like thank you for doing that. And whenever they say when Nasrallah was killed, they always say it in the passive voice, as if there are a bunch of Martians who came and killed this guy. Come on, if you like that Nasrallah's gone, Israel has killed him, then look, that's there. It's your interest lining up on the same side. So just talk to
Start
the
to
Israeli.
recognize like Morocco and the UAE and was it Tunisia? I'm trying to think. That signed the Abraham Accords and that are stepping that maybe they could inch toward that. I mean, I don't know, with Lebanon, with 480,000 Palestinian refugees, I don't agree with that number at all. But the descendants of Palestinian refugees, and then I think 650 to 800,000 Syrians, and then you've got Shia and Sunni, and of course you got your Jews and all that, and Christians, a formerly Christian majority country. Like, what a complexity is Lebanon because of all of that. Are they going to be able to either one, after maybe the dust settles a little bit, put their country back and restore it to some semblance of its former glory, Paris of the West or whatever, or the East? Are they going to ever be able to really rule now that Christians are out of the majority? Is it going to still inch to the Sharia direction? I don't know, because Shias and Sunnis disagree. Are they going to have all Syrians? Are they all going to leave and go home to Syria? That would significantly impact their ability to govern, I would think. And I don't know what happens to the Palestinians. And do you think they could ever be friends with Israel? Like, for real?
Well, well, let me answer the easiest question. There's no Sharia that's coming to Lebanon, whoever
Okay.
is in charge. Yeah, so I mean, I'm happy that that's the case and that's out of the way.
Hmm.
Now, a bit of background and depth on this. What you see in the Middle East is that when the world um, changed from the age of empires to the age of the nation states, these guys didn't get the memo. So they were part of the Ottoman Empire. Then the Ottoman Empire collapsed, but they never formed nation states. So what you see now are the basic components of a state never put together to make a nation state. And that's why whenever we're talking about Syria or Lebanon or Iraq or even the Palestinians, we have to say, yeah, well, the Druze want this, and then the Kurds want that, and then the Shia would side with the other guys. So all of the reason we're discussing the components that make each of these countries is because these countries never transformed themselves into actual nation states. So
Can a
just
tribal
this,
culture do that, or a sectarian culture? Because to me, if I were, I'm just saying as a scenario, if I were um, a Kurd, I'd want a Kurdistan. If I
right,
were a Baluch, I'd want a Baluchistan. If I was an
right,
Arabistani, then I would want that. I would
yes,
want that. And to me, because I'm a big believer in nation states, it seems to me that if you broke it down closer to the tribal, because when you look at a tribal map of Iraq, it's insane. I mean, there are so many tribes. Like, if you could be sort of like United Arab Emirates, but maybe break down Iraq smaller. This isn't my foreign policy for anybody to follow, or I know Iran would be horrified to hear that, but maybe Syria could be some smaller states, because Syria isn't the shape of Syria from 4,000 years ago.
Right,
Couldn't it,
right. Yes.
could we have a
So
Kurdistan?
So number one, all of these nations, or most of them, they just curse Sykes-Picot, the agreement that drew the borders, and I agree with them. It's not set in stone. If you guys want self-determination, if the Maronites of Lebanon, the Christians of Lebanon, want to have Mount Lebanon as an independent state, as a Lebanese, I'd vote in favor.
Hmm.
And as an Iraqi, I'd vote in favor for the independence of the Kurds. And anyone who wants to have their country,
You just
that's
have to
fine with
vote
me.
for it, though. The people have to agree
Yeah,
to
yeah, just
split. You
hold a
can't.
referendum, and if you
Yeah.
want to live on your own, why stick you with the other guys? And these countries were put together in such a way at the time to serve the oil pipelines that were being constructed from Iran and Iraq all the way to the Mediterranean. But that's an old story.
Right.
Now, the only success that you see is that the Gulf Peninsula, so Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, these guys are faring much better than the rest of them, is because their exposure to all of this revolutionary, fervor, whatnot, was minimal. So what you see that's happening in Saudi Arabia or the UAE is that they've been growing organically into what you see now. And many people would want to dismiss them as, okay, well, these guys have a lot of oil, so there's no credit to them. Well, that's not true. Iran has more oil than all of them. And look at Iran now, or Iraq even. Iraq has oil as much as Saudi Arabia. And look at them now. So the point that I'm trying to make is that when they grew organically, they fared better. Now, you go back to the Middle East, they never grew organically. The alien powers kept on intervening, first the French and the British, and then the Turks and the Iranians, and after that, someone and somebody else. So these guys are used to hedging on the greater powers because greater powers are always in their
And there
backyard.
was for Ottomans for 400 years. I mean, when you think
Exactly.
about the mandate period only lasted maybe 50 years. It was just
Right.
transitionary. And that is one thing that I object to is the idea, and I think this is very much a Marxist and Islamist sort of fiction that, when England went in there, they didn't go in like they went into India hundreds of years before that.
Right.
They went in
Yes.
as a trustee to take the people of these different areas and to move them toward a self-government, which didn't take long for most of them. I mean,
Right.
it was just like 20, 25 years.
And we can see why. And now it makes sense because once these guys left, look what
No,
happened
it
after
was
they
all
left. I
over
mean,
with.
yeah, and I'm on the record, which makes many of my friends unhappy, saying bring the mandate back.
I
I mean,
agree. What do you
under
think
the
about
mandate,
France going back into Lebanon for a while?
yeah, or because once France left, the Lebanese followed France, so they kicked out the mandate, and then they all moved to the mandate country, and the same thing happened with the Algerians and the French and the Lebanese, and so if you're going to move to Europe to live under European rule, you might as well just keep it where you are, right? I mean, instead of moving everybody else. So to me, none of this is engraved in stone. All ideas are open for discussion. And the bottom line here, and this is something that the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, MBS, said once, and I loved it at the time. I haven't heard it saying it after that. He said that our goal in the West Bank and Gaza is to raise the living standards of Palestinians, to make their lives better. And that's the bottom line for me as someone who still have, I still have people over there. What I want to see happen is for the lights to stay on, water to be, you open the tap and you find water, security, and that's it. I want this to be available to my parents and family over there, and that's it. And so the bottom line is, I'm just saying, why are these Palestinians fighting for sovereignty when they can't manage a building? I mean, what's the point? Right? Do
The
you want? Do you want to?
Venezuelans in Aurora, Colorado can manage
Yeah.
a building better than the Palestinians. The Palestinians, I say this all the time, and I know it must really object, but I have a very small, I just started on X, so nobody sees me that much. But I just say that the Palestinians are not fit to govern. That's the bottom line. I see Cenk Uygur
That's
going
correct.
insane. Do you think the people of Palestine are the only people in the world that can't govern themselves? And I think, well, I don't know if they're the only, but I know they are one. They are not ever, I believe, going to be able to govern themselves. And so I wanted to ask you about this. I wanted to talk about the Lebanese diaspora, of which you obviously are one. But instead, what I'd like to ask you is this. When I was talking to Ambassador David Friedman, he just wrote a book. Have you read this book, One Jewish State, yet?
It's on my to-read list,
I
but haven't
know.
gotten to it
I've got
yet.
a
Yes.
list like 1,000 books wide or
Yes.
tall. So it's an easy read. I told him I thought it was an important book because I love his plan. And he has some organization that he's coming out with a book right after this organization was developed. And I know there are different ways for people to think of the Arab-Palestinian problem. For me, I think that the two-state solution was never a solution. It was a non-starter way back with Hajj Amin al-Husseini, 1937, 39. All of that, I think it's never gone anywhere because, firstly, I'm a Christian. I don't believe God was really wanting that to happen, but I don't think that they ever wanted their own state. They wanted to replace Israel. Obviously, that was the goal, and that's a non-starter. And their security concerns prevent there ever being a sovereignty of um, a Muslim Arab Palestinian state inside basically of Israel, which is exactly what it would be. So David Freeman's idea is kind of a riff off of Mordecai Kadar, where he says, give them their autonomy, but not national sovereignty. They vote. They'll actually get to vote because they haven't, what, in like 18 years, 17 years, 15. They'll get to vote. Maybe they're voting for their local, Mordecai Kedar calls it like an emirate, right? There's these, Ramallah would be an emirate, Gaza, whatever. And they vote for that. There's that limited autonomy or sovereignty with it, not sovereignty, autonomy, just like Puerto Rico. And they are not allowed to vote in the national elections for Israel. Only Arabs that are citizens today and their progeny, right? And
Yes.
therefore, there's prosperity. They don't have the sovereignty so that they can build up an army and destroy Israel. All of the and the tyrants like Mahmoud Abbas, I mean, he doesn't get to do his thing in Sinwar. What do you think about that plan? Do you think it's crazy? I love it.
No, look, I mean, I I learned Hebrew especially to be able to read the Israeli debates and listen to them and understand what these guys are thinking. Now, I don't claim to be speaking on behalf of Israelis, but my impression is that they wouldn't mind giving the Palestinians anything, but it's only a matter of trust. Had they trusted that these Palestinians don't want the destruction of Israel, like in their hearts, they would have been okay. What do you want? Okay, just run whatever you want to run. I'll be here, you'll be there, everyone will be happy. Look, I mean, the French and the Germans fought for hundreds of years and hated one another. There was a lot of bad blood between them. Now, if you go there and you drive, you wouldn't even notice the border. And you can be German and you can be living in Paris and working. And when election time comes, you vote on the other side. Now, if the Palestinians could ever earn the trust of Israelis, it would be the same. You're Palestinian, you can live anywhere, but your government is over there. So, I mean, these ideas are easy, but the cornerstone, whatever scheme we want to come up with, the cornerstone would be always trust. And look, suppose Mahmoud Abbas was the government of the UAE in Ramallah. Suppose in Ramallah you had the government of the UAE. I think peace would have happened like that, right? I mean, the UAE and Israel, they trust one another,
Oh,
right?
I see what you're saying. If he was like a UAE leader,
Yes,
then oh well,
yes,
yeah, but but
exactly.
but they're a different animal altogether because, do you think that the reason that the Arab Palestinians seem so different is that they were born and created the genesis of this culture that, it was never a state. It never had a king. It's never been a state. It was a district within various empires that they were born in with a violent, angry, envious sort of not I don't know ideology, and that it's permeated since Haj Amin al-Husseini all the way down. And how do you just cleanse that out? Because if it's in your sort of your DNA in your heart, you teach to your kids from the cradle, it's going to take a couple of generations to cleanse that. And so do you think that part of it is just that the way the culture's developed, that it's just war
So
and
so
Jew
the
hatred?
biggest part of it is that they've been told that this is your state, and that, by all these Arabs and Muslims, they've been told, okay, this is your state and you can give it up. The point is that all these Islamist and crazy and national Arabist movements, they use Palestine to deflect domestic anger into something else. So if you lived in Iraq and they said, oh, we're miserable and we're poor, why? Well, that's because of the Jews in Israel, and because Palestine was taken from us, and that's why we're poor. The same thing happens in, I know the story. I grew up in Lebanon. So the point here is that if you go back before 1964, these Palestinians were not really actually crazy about sovereignty. So the West Bank was under Arab sovereignty, Jordanian sovereignty, until 1967. And you have these 20 years, you wouldn't hear a single Palestinian voice that would say, yes, this is our country, let's make a capital and mint money and, issue passports. They never did that. So the reason why this was born, it's a long story, but there's all these sorts of disagreements between the Egyptians on one side and the Saudis on the other side. Two poles, and they kept on outbidding one another until they got into this situation. So the point here is that all of this was born as a fictional story of game and nationalism and politics, and mix them all together, throw in some Islam, and boom, you you get something that no one. I mean, I keep on. And it's because if you debate any Palestinian, they'll say Palestine existed since forever. And then the next question would be really easy. You can just ask, name one king, just or one president, just one of them before Arafat, right? Just give me one name. You wouldn't find any. And now, if you were
Shakiri,
in Lebanon,
Shakari, Shakari was
Shukhairi,
right.
but yeah,
I know, I'm joking.
Shukhairi, yeah, 64.
Yeah,
So
64. 1964
yeah,
is the beginning.
yes,
You know, I think that if Americans who have been miseducated could become educated about this one issue, because it seems that in leftism, to be a member of the club, you have to be anti Israel, anti-Zionism, and pro-Palestinianism is what I call it. That's a ticket into the room. You can't be any leftist uh, shape or form, belong to any of the clubs unless you've got that legitimacy there. And it seems to me that one of our highest ideals should be, or goals should be, teaching. It's not that hard to teach this history and explain it so that we don't have, I think that our strength is in supporting Israel. And if ever we do not support Israel, I think the Middle East is in big, big trouble. Do you agree?
no, I absolutely agree. Now, look, I mean, all these ideas that they put out there, Congresswoman Tlaib or Congresswoman Omar, for example, they are they oppose borders, right? They think we shouldn't have a border with Mexico, that anyone who comes in should come in because no one is illegal. So we just live on one planet and nation state does not exist, right? I don't subscribe to this. I'm just, stating their argument. So, okay. So now let's move this argument and take it to Israel. Now, over there, Palestine is a fenced state where no Jew should set foot because Jews do not belong there. They should go back from wherever they came from. So you have this one argument that's and the opposite in the same people. right? I mean, this is, I mean, I'm only using what they're saying. So the point here is that if you take the narrative that they're putting out there, they don't end up. And I just gave you one example about immigrants, illegal
Oh, there are
immigrants,
dozens
and
of those things that are
settlers,
the
and
exact
dozens.
opposite when it
Yes,
comes to Israel.
yes. So the point here is that the bottom line is that success is not something that if you're someone on the left side of politics that you like or you enjoy. You always think that there's a zero-sum game, that if there's a rich guy, then he got the money from other people. That there must be someone poor. If there's a rich guy, then they took the money out of someone poor. So because Israel has been successful for all these decades, there's always the assumption that why is Israel successful and the other guys, like not even states, like the neighborhood is failing. And this is answered the same way that they answer the difference between rich and poor. Oh, Israel is successful is because they took the land and the resources and killed the others, and that's why they're reigning and everybody else is suffering. So this is the basic idea of why they oppose, even though, like, I mean, look, MLK understood that he and Jewish Americans, or he and Israel, had a common platform, right? I mean, if you're MLK, that's what it was. Now, good luck explaining this to people today, because they see Israel as a successful thing. So if you're successful, you can't
So
be a
they're the
victim.
oppressor. You're the
Yeah,
oppressor if you're
exactly,
successful.
exactly,
And you're
exactly.
white.
Yes.
Israelis are super white. They're ultra white as opposed to me. I'm Irish. But they're even they don't even know that 60% of Israel is of Middle Eastern or North African descent. They don't even know that.
Or or the Palestinian. You ever familiar with this lady Tamimi who slapped an Israeli soldier and
Oh,
spent time in
with
prison?
the blonde
Have you?
curly hair.
Yes, with blue eyes. Exactly. Yes. I mean, if that's our standard,
What
then
is it
my
about
mom,
that? I
you know,
see pictures all the time in Gaza, and they're these little blonde-haired, curly, blonde-haired, adorable children running around, and the parents are saying, "My daughter's this," and the dad's dark, and I'm just like, where do all these blondes come from?
yeah. And if that's the standard, then my own mom and sister wouldn't make the cut, or wife. All
Are
of them
she?
are
Is your mom blonde?
blonde, and my mom is blonde, green eyes, white, fair skin. She wouldn't make the cut. She'd be kicked out of Lebanon tomorrow. So if this is how we're classifying
I know
people,
it's so ridiculous and lame,
yeah,
and it doesn't work anything. I just wonder that if the Ottoman Empire was about 2 million square miles at its heyday. I don't remember what year you would call his heyday, but when it got down to 1917, the Ottoman Empire was 1 million square miles. Israel got 1.12% of
yes,
1 million square miles. All the rest is Muslim, other than it was, Lebanon is like a jelly bean. I mean, it's not
yeah,
even, it's like
it's
barely, I don't even know how
half, half the size of Israel,
it's
even
half the size
less.
of Israel. It's so
Yes,
cute. And there's no room to make any mistake. So it's all Muslim, 1 million square miles. That's including Turkey, of course, because what they got to keep. And then here's 1.1% for Israel. And I guess of that, I guess Lebanon got like a 0.5% or less for their state. How could anybody look at that and say the colonial imperialist Jews stole this land from theirs? Because if you take it down to Israel and say, look at what Jews are doing to these Arabs, but what if you take it down? Here's the Ottoman Empire, 1 million square miles. We gave it all to Muslims of various stripes, whether we did it right or wrong, and they got this much. They really don't look too imperialistic and colonial, do they?
well, this has to be based on the idea that I hate imperial colonialists, which I don't. And I think imperial colonialism has been part of human civilization on the day it was born. And if you think otherwise, then try to explain why Alexandria in Egypt is called Alexandria. I mean, it is clearly after Alexander who's a Macedonian from Greece. So, and I know the history of the region. There's nothing that's pure Arab or pure Muslim or pure anything. It's layers upon layers of empires and colonies and settlement. That's how it is. So,
The history of the Middle
and
East, the history of the world, as a matter of fact, but the history of the Middle
right,
East is just a history of empire. And
and
most of them have been brown-skinned empires. Persians, if you call them brown-skinned, I don't even like that, but